Well, I did. I was on the Musicians Union board for, I think, 5 years. And I was also president of Music BC. And so I did a fair amount of lobbying for advocacy for musicians and artists' rights. And probably one of the biggest ones was appearing in front of Canadian Heritage for the Neighbouring Rights, which was Bill C.
And that was in Ottawa.
That was in Ottawa. I flew there and appeared in front of Canadian Heritage when that whole bill was being put, which was actually was part of the big update of our copyright law. That was actually was Jean Chrétien. We were talking about that earlier when we met him, but his government brought in sweeping changes in copyright, which to this day for me and many musicians has been a good thing, because we get performance royalty from airplay around the whole world, because Canada signed on to this WTO agreement. And I had a part of fighting for that, right? But it was it's basically the right. They call it the neighboring right because it's the right that neighbors songwriting and publishing. Because songwriting and publishing, of course, you get performance royalties for when your song gets played on the radio. Well, now as a performer and as a maker, the maker would be the record company, the performers would be the main artist, and then the side players get a royalty from performance when a song gets played on radio throughout the world. So
yes, up until the neighboring rights thing was implemented, a person would come in and let's say there's a story that people have played on major hits and their fee, they got $75 one-time payment. See you later, and that song goes on to be played for 40 years. 50 years. Now with neighboring rights, they will get their, let's say, $75. It's much more than that, of course, now, but they would get that money, and they would also share in any of the sales. Or is it sales? It's performance.
It depends, because different countries have, like Japan has a thing where you actually get some money off sales, but that depends whether there's so many different levels and different, like if it's a union contract, there's different levels, like reuse fees, but that's different. Neighboring rights it's like a right that you get, but you got to make sure that you register. It's no different than anything. Like a lot of guys, how many times you hear guys, I never made any money off that. And you go, well, did you actually do the paperwork to register it with Actra Rax or whatever collective it is that collects these royalties? And they go, oh, I never knew about that. So, that's the thing. It's like anything. And I can't, mention this to musicians in a stark terms, but it's like, it's the music business. So you have to understand the music industry and all the different streams of revenue, and that there's paperwork to do in order to get paid for this stuff. And if you don't do the paperwork, you don't get paid.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that we can touch on a few things today and actually have them in the links on our notes here on where people can research these things.
Yeah.
So one of them, of course, is neighboring rights that we sort of just glazed over. But let's say, okay, so Joe Schmo has an album. He wants to do an album, and he wants to release it. But he wants to make sure that he's got his rights covered. So step one, the songs are done. First of all, you would register with SOCAN.
Right.
If you're Canadian. If you're in the States, it would be ASCAP or BMI. And I'm not sure the other ones in the world.
Well, every country has their own, every country has their own writing, their affiliate for dealing with copyright as far as for songwriters and publishers, and for the neighboring right as well. There's different, every country has its own collective, but if you belong to one here and you cut deals to work different territories and stuff, but that's the more elaborate part of it.
Okay, so let's say I released an album and I want to make sure that my songs, I can maximize any money that I can make and I'm protected. Okay, so my first job is I register those songs with SOCAN. Next, what do I do?
Well, then you want to register with Actra Rax, and then as a performer,
Rax is RACS.
RACS Rax. There's some other organizations because there's competitive people that will collect that. That's the one that I chose to go with for Canada. They collect a lot of stuff throughout the world for me as well. There's if it's union stuff. recorded union stuff, you'd go with AFM, SAG-AFTRA in the States. There's Sound Exchange, which is another one in the States as a featured performer. And then you'd also, as a record company, you have to register your neighboring right. And obviously as a record company, you have to register your neighboring right because you're entitled as a record company to get neighboring right through Connect or Connect Music in Canada. It's another organization where you register the metadata for all this stuff's got metadata that you have to, fill out the right paperwork. It's not that complicated, but if you research it, you can figure out how to do it. But there's a lot of different stuff.
And if a person is okay, so you're touching on something. If so, you've recorded an album, you got SOCAN neighboring rights. Oh, I know what it is. So you also want to make sure that the song, the album, and the sessions are union, correct?
Ideally you do. Yeah,
through the musicians union. I mean.
Yeah. If you're working for somebody, you want it to be through the musicians union. Depending if you're doing your own thing, you can do it as well. It's always good to try and have a third party do that. That's kind of, I would suggest that you try and do that as much as possible. For me, it's like I tried to get all these album sessions and stuff that I worked on. I tried to get put through the musicians union because you get reuse fees. For instance, a song like "Kickstart My Heart." I mean, I was doing a session with.
That's a Motley Crue song. Yeah,
Motley Crue song, and I was doing a session with Bob Rock, and we were sitting there, and he's going, "Mark, when we were doing that album, did you think that Kickstart My Heart would be like the major song for these guys?" And I thought, yeah, it was a great tune, but that song's been in at least 20 to 25 different major motion pictures or major television shows. So now if you did that under the auspices of the Musicians Association, every time they do, it goes to a new show. It's filed with the union. You've got to follow up with the union, and you'll get paid over a reuse fee for that new use. And now because you've filed this new use, because you've done the new use, then it goes the film industry and the TV industry for big shows. Every year they put millions upon millions of dollars in this fund that's divvied amongst the people that have it's another royalty that you get every year for the performances in these different TV shows. That's another stream of revenue.
And a lot of times you've got to be your own secretary on that.
If you're not like the neighboring right, once you do that and you cut the deals, you'll get that money. You don't need to worry about it as long as you do the paperwork correctly. And if the song's getting played throughout the world for 75 years after you die, your estate will continue to make money off that song.
Interesting. I remember talking with the late Gay Delorme now when we were hanging out, and he wrote all the songs like "Earache My Eye" and "Basketball Jones," all the stuff for the big Cheech and Chong albums and the movies, and did the soundtracks. He did well with that. But one of his biggest claims to fame was the rodeo song. Well, it's 40 below, and I don't go. That song. It was hard for him because people thought it was public domain.
Yeah.
And so people would record. There'd be these heavy bands, like big recording contract bands, that would throw it on their album as a joke, not realizing that somebody actually wrote that song.
Yeah.
And they would just put it on without giving him any credit. And he would have to chase it down himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I remember that was one of his biggest complaints. He says, "Why do I have to do this for me? Why do I have to chase this down? Should there not be a place that's looking out for me as a songwriter?"
No, it's like any business, though, unfortunately. If you don't look after yourself, nobody's going to look after you. So these organizations like the Musicians Union and all of these collectives, they're there to do stuff, but you have to make sure that you do the paperwork. And like I said, in the instance of the Musicians Union, if you do something, you have to. I mean, I make a joke about it to you all the time, but it's like I watch tons of movies and TV shows, not just because I enjoy doing it, but in case I run across some of the stuff. Of course, now with the internet, it's much easier because you can do a search and find stuff very, very quickly. But still, I've been watching a movie on a plane and I go, whoa, there it is. I've got home
I think
and
I sang on that.
yeah, no. And then I go home, and if I check and see if it was a union gig, I phone up the union and I say, this is this. 3 months later, I get my initial payment, and then I continue getting my royalties from it for years down the road. But I mean, if you don't keep on top of it, you don't get remuneration.
Hey, Mark, so obviously you come from the traditional side of the music industry, right? Where, record companies and that sort of thing. But now we've had this shift to a digital age and digital music, and people are having to really put more effort into self-promoting and that side of it. How has that changed in relation to the stuff that we're talking about now for those artists that are now trying to break into the industry? They don't get the traditional roadmap.
Well, they still have to do exactly what I said. They still have to register stuff. It doesn't matter, because the streaming and stuff is being paid through some of these organizations that I've mentioned. So you want to make sure that your paperwork is together so you do get paid for this stuff, because streaming is only going to go up. And I know a lot of people my age get upset with streaming because they think, it's taken away the CD and the album. But the fact of the matter is artists now, like if you hit it big now, you make it like guys like Justin Bieber, Drake, they make more money than Paul McCartney and the Beatles and the Stones combined, like when they hit it now, because they're streaming, they're doing like 16 million, 7 million streams a week or whatever it is, or maybe even more than that. So they're making a lot of money off it. So it's the same kind of tools and principles apply. It's just that it's instead of it being the radio station and the TV station, now it's become the internet. And countries like Canada right now are working to update. It's up to musicians to be proactive to make sure that the copyright laws are up to date, so that we start to get the money that we deserve. But that's always been that way, and it's going to continue to be that way. But they have to be active and really get behind lobbying to make changes to make sure that they get money. But all the tools, the organizations that are set up, you still need to do that type of stuff in order to get paid for your streams and downloads. And still, I mean, the key is with the streams and the download is that you want to try and get your stuff out there and hopefully link up with a company that will shop your stuff for film and television use, because that's where you can make headway in the industry today, is if you can get a placement in a movie or a TV show. So.
Can we back up a bit?
Yeah.
We grazed over Spotify and all these streaming services. There's musicians out there, like you had said, musicians out there that, Spotify, it's a ripoff, it's this, it's that. Now you have a bit of a rebuttal on that. Can you sort of explain what you mean by that?
I mean, I understand. The problem is that the tradition of the musicians that sign deals with major labels, right? Major labels, they got deals where, let's say they had, they were only getting paid 10% of 90% of retail. So they're not getting as much money off this streaming as, let's say, if they had their own stuff, like a Drake, who has his own company now, he's the record company, so he gets all the money. So the record companies are making most of the money off this. So that's why you're getting complaints from some of the bigger artists that they're not getting their fair share, because these records were done years ago, and they're getting their money from these old deals that are like really don't. So I mean, I think those types of things too. It's almost like big artists have to get together and I think maybe they are, some of them, like Don Henley and a couple. I've heard him speak up about it, where they need to do a fight to renegotiate their old deals, because it's a whole new business.
It is. It's a totally new world.
Yeah. But it will be. But you got to remember too, it used to be like when you sold in the old days, like even an average band, like I'll take my band Crocus. We maybe our 2 records cost $40,000 to produce at the time, which was back in the 70s. And we got 6% and 90% of retail. So we got it. So you're just paying the money that you get back goes against your production costs, right? And so you don't end up recouping. A lot of these bands never recouped, so they never made any money because they never recouped on their production costs. So now, if you're a new artist and you can do your own thing, you can set up your own thing. You make all the money, you know. And of course, nowadays there's nowhere near where you'd have to spend the kind of money we did in the past. I mean, our budgets were low compared to what bands back in the day were spending on producing records. Because back then you had to go to a recording studio. You couldn't. Nobody had home studios, of course.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Check out our other vignettes and full episodes from a wide variety of guests for more great content. Please like, share, and subscribe, and become a member at SocialNRGPresents.com to access premium content and earn valuable energy points just for watching.